Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm so excited that so many of you are here. This is wonderful. I'm Gina Pisello, if you haven't met me before, and I have been a member of San Diego Book Arts for 17 years now. And book arts are my primary form of art, although I enjoy a bunch of other things. And I'm mainly a sculptural book artist. I don't letterpress print or usually write stories or illustrate in my books. A lot of it is folded books, structures that I invent, or altering books. So I'm going to show you today a way that I like to alter books, and it's something that I just started doing in January. I have this book from Paul Jackson called Pleats. He's an amazing origami artist and just all around paper engineer type. And he has a project in the book where you fold pleats and then you cut them. And I fell in love with this technique because it allows you to bring forward imagery from the back side of the paper into the front side of the paper and sort of marry those images. So this is what we're going to make today. Let me take this out from under it. This is what hopefully you'll end up with at the end of our session today. And I'm going to teach you some ways to alter these rectangular shapes, but this is the basic thing we're going to do. Just so you know where we're going from. And I'm going to be using this piece of paper that is very colorful on one side and plain on the other. And hopefully all of you have something like that. It'll be just easier to see the folds if one side is plain. And then once you've done it a few times, it's really fun to do a two-sided piece of paper that has images on both sides. And the supplies you'll need are a pen or pencil, a bone folder, and your scissors. And then one of the first things I made after I started playing around with this pleating and folding and cutting technique was this little book. And it started out, I had taken apart a book of American wildflowers. And I like to take apart books and keep the signatures whole. I don't like to tear the pages out because then I can reuse them and the signature's already there. So I just wanted to show you, this was the size of the pages before I folded them. And then when I folded them up to do this twist pleating and then rebound it, they come out this size. And see how you get this mix of, here, I'll hold this up well. You get the mix of images from one side of the paper intermingling with the other side. And on the back side, you get this cool sort of woven shape, which I also like and have been playing with. So that's the only book that I've made so far. But I've done a lot of playing with what you can do with this. And one of the cool things you can do is you don't have to leave these rectangular. You can trim the edges, and I'm going to show you how we won't end up with circles because we're going to be doing a rectangular piece of paper. So we're going to get a rectangular area. So we'll get ovals today. But basically, I'll show you how to cut some of this before you finish folding, and you'll get ovals or circles if you start with a square. If you saw my Instagram post the other day, I was messing around with other ways of, let me move this out of the way, other things that we can do. And I started to do this so that you could see what it would look like if you were going to do a signature type thing. And if you'll notice, I've done all the folds, but I haven't done pleats in these areas here so that these could be folds of the page. And when I got to playing with this, anyway, I'm going to show you this technique too. There's a way to fold some of this imagery and you get these cool shapes. And I realized I could make numbers with it. And I think I can make all the numbers, but these are the only ones I've done so far. So that's kind of fun. And there's other shapes you can do with the cutting technique. You can make something like this. You can do hexagons. They're a little tricky, so I'm not going to show you that one today. And then yesterday I wanted to play a little bit more, and I wanted to do something dimensional with the pleats. And so this is what I came up with. And I was using my bone folder to curl the corners of my paper, and it was really hard to get into this middle row. And then the last one I did was the very center one, and I finally realized if I just sort of pinched it together, it would curl. So I sort of like this. It looks a little bit like boats on a green sea or something. And then I was also thinking about something that could pop up from the plane. And so now this is the back side of, so this is the side that's been pleated, and then this is the back side. And I just did these little, this is just tissue paper that I scrunched. And then if you sort of pull a little, and maybe I'll have time later to show you, but there's really a hole in the center where these pleats cross each other. And if you give it a little bit of a tug, maybe I can show you on this one, you can, if you tug a little bit at the pleats, you can open up the space. Can you see that? You can make that a little bit bigger. And then I just sort of tucked the little tissue paper in the center. So lots of ideas, and I'm sure I haven't exhausted everything that can be done with this. And hopefully you will like this and you will try and you will come up with other ideas. Oh, something else you can do. Everything I've showed you so far involves pleating and folding so that the pleats touch, and you'll understand more what I mean when we actually do it. But you can also pleat. They don't have to touch. See how there's a space in here? And they also don't have to be right on top of each other. So I've just done 4 discrete sets of pleats in exactly where I wanted them to be on this paper, because this original image had these 4 artworks on both sides of the paper, and I could just isolate that area to do the alteration too. So some other ideas for you to think about. Anyway, now that I have filled your head with way too many things.
Gina,
yes.
Krista wanted to know the name of the book and the author, please.
Yes, it's Complete Pleats by Paul Jackson. Here,
okay, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Complete Pleats by Paul Jackson. Okay, I'll type that in.
He's written several books, but this one kind of, if you like pleating paper and folding paper, this has basically everything in it that you can imagine. Okay, so if you are ready, you need your sheet of paper, and I'm going to start with mine this direction, but you can start either way. We're going to start by folding the sheet of paper in quarters in one direction, then turning it and folding it in quarters the other way. And I would like to recommend, because I'm going to be repeating steps several times for each thing that we're doing, for each fold that we're doing or cut, it might be helpful if you watch me do the first step and then you do it, because there's a couple of places where I'm going to give you directions, and if you just go ahead and do it, you might do it wrong. So it'd be best if you watch me do it first, and we're going to go slow and there'll be plenty of time, and then do it yourselves. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is divide this in half, which means I take the bottom edge of the paper and I fold it up to the top edge and line it up nicely, because we need nice creases. I'm going to fold that in half, give it a good crease. If you want to use your bone folder to crease it, you can as well. Oh, and the thing I didn't say, sorry, hopefully it was obvious, but you're going to start with your colorful side of paper face up. That's important. So if you didn't do that, then turn it around and fold your center crease. Okay. And you unfold. And now we're going to fold the bottom edge to the center. And this might be a little tricky to see, but just get as close as you can. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but it needs to be straight, but it doesn't need to be exactly in the center. And again, give it a crease with your bone folder. And then I like to leave this folded so I have an edge to fold up against. And I'm going to take the top edge of my paper and fold it down to the middle and sort of butt those edges up against each other. You don't want to go over that center point, but you can kind of just make sure those edges touch. And give that a good crease on the top. And it should look like that. And then I'm going to unfold everything. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sections of our paper, but more importantly, we have 1, 2, 3 creases. Okay, we don't actually care a whole lot about the sections for this project. We care more about the creases. And now I'm going to rotate my paper 90 degrees so that for me it's the long way. If you're doing it exactly the way I'm doing it, now it should be the long way in front of you, and I just flatten it out a little bit. And we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to fold the bottom edge to the top edge to fold the paper in half. And then unfold. And fold the bottom to that center crease. And take your time. Make sure you give it a good crease. And I'm going to fold my top edge down, roll it until it meets that center point. And then I'm going to unfold, flatten it out a bit. And now you should have 4 sections running from top to bottom. Your paper should be divided into 16 rectangles. And again, you should have 3 fold lines going the way we just did. I'm going to give you all a second to finish that. Okay, now you're going to take your paper and you're going to turn it over onto the white or the light colored side. Mine isn't white anymore. When we marbled this paper, we got it a bit messy on the back. Okay, now you should have a series of mountain folds. When we were folding on the other side, we were creating valley folds. And now we have mountain folds. And if you don't know what a mountain fold is versus a valley fold, it's kind of what it sounds like. So a mountain fold goes up like a mountain, and a valley fold goes down like a valley. So, but it's very hard to fold a mountain fold on the side that you want it to be on. That's why you fold on the other side, valley folds, and then you flip it over and you get mountains. So now we have all these mountain folds. And the next thing we're going to do is work on our pleats. So this is one of the places where I want you to watch what I do before you do it, because it won't mess up your final product, but you'll have too many folds. So I've still got my paper oriented this long way, and I have 3 mountain folds that are running the same direction as that are parallel to me and parallel to the long edges of the paper. And I'm going to take the first one that's closest to me, this one here, and I'm going to fold it up to the center fold, but I am not going to crease all the way across. I am just going to pinch a crease on either side to mark the center point between these 2 mountain folds. So watch me do that, and then you can do it. So the way I lift up the mountain fold is I put my thumbs and fingers on the paper and bring this mountain up, and I'm going to line up with the crease in the middle, and I'm just going to do a little pinch, maybe 1/4 or 1/2 inch on the right hand side, and then I'm going to make sure the mountains line up, make sure the edge lines up, and feel for that where the paper is underneath, so you can't see it, but you can feel, and you're just going to give it a little pinch, and then you're going to open it up. Okay, so now you should do that. So lift up, pick up your first mountain, pinch it together with your thumb and fingers, bring it up to the center mountain. Once you get it lined up, do a little pinch crease on the right-hand side and do a little pinch crease on the left-hand side. And then you can unfold. Now we're going to fold the same mountain fold, that first mountain fold, up to these little pinch marks. And let me draw them so you can see them. You don't need to draw them unless you can't see them. And then I would say use pencil so you can erase, but I will draw them. So I've got these little pinches on either side in case you couldn't see them. And I'm going to fold the mountain up to that pinch crease. And because I'm working on the long side of my paper, it can go askew easily. So as I'm going across, I'm slowly folding and I'm lining up my creases that are going north-south as I go across. And I'm not doing a final crease until I get all the way to the right and make sure that's lined up on my pinch as well. especially since I think this direction of my paper is going against the grain. Okay, so now that I've got my crease going all the way across, again, there's this layer of paper underneath this top of paper, and I'm running my fingers along that crease a couple of times to sort of indent that crease on my paper. And I want you to do that. I want you to make a little dent where the 3 layers of paper are, and I'll show you on the side. See how this paper sort of zigzags? I want you to run your finger along this fold that we just created, but on this side. Just give it a couple of pinches, a couple of presses, and you should be able to see it. And then we're going to create the other part of the crease by slowly standing this mountain fold up. Keep the paper pinched together. And as you're standing it up, I'm gonna put my fingers on the side where we have the crease, and we're trying to create a new crease on this side. And I'm slowly standing it up, and I'm using my thumbnails to sort of pinch a crease on this side. And again, you might want to watch me do this first because we'll do this again. And then I'm slowly tipping that mountain fold back towards me so that I can fold it down the other way.
So Gina,
So we started here with creasing up to our pinch marks. Ran our fingers over it a couple of times. And then I want you to pick up this pleat. And once you get it vertical, I want you to start rubbing your hands back and forth, your thumbnails on the side closer to you, and sort of start easing it down towards you. You're sort of giving it a score with your thumbnails. And then once you've done that, once you've got it folded in both directions, I want you to fold it back up away from you. And then I like to turn my paper around to do the next part. So if you want to do it exactly like I am, turn your paper 180 degrees. You can leave it, but it's just, I think it'll be easier for you to see what I'm doing. So the next thing you want to do is take the mountain fold that's the center crease and lift it up. And we're going to fold it to the pleat that we just made. And do the same thing. You're going to give it a good crease a couple of times and just rub your fingers along that edge so that you start to create a dent in the paper. And then slowly stand up the center crease and use your thumbnails to crease that. So it's nice and it's standing nice and straight and tall. And I've sort of scored along here with my thumbnails, and then I can slowly turn it, the pleat, so that it's now facing me. Okay. Now we have 2 of our 3 pleats done in this direction. And then we just have 1 more to do. And that should be now the mountain fold that is closest to you because you've turned your paper around. And then same thing, we're going to lift this up and make sure that center pleat is flat on your surface. And you're going to slowly fold this last mountain fold, pinch the paper together and fold it up to the pleat you just completed. And one thing you really need to make sure about, it's okay if you're a little bit away and there's a little gap between them, but don't fold over. If you go over the pleat you just made, then the last step of this process won't work. So make sure that they can be touching up against each other, so there's no space between them. Don't go over, and if you need to go, if you're back a little bit, that's okay. If there's a little bit of a gap, it's fine. But try to get it as close to touching as you can without overlapping. And then again, I'm going to slowly rub my fingers back and forth a couple of times just to indent that paper. And then I'm going to stand it up, run my thumbnails across a couple of times, and then tip that pleat back towards me. Okay. So then you have this series of 3 pleats that can all stand up vertically and fold in either direction. Okay, you're going to rotate your paper 90 degrees, and we're going to do the same thing in the long direction. So your first mountain fold, and flatten your paper out. Unfold everything and give it a little bit of a press so it's flatter. And you're going to pick up that first mountain, and you're going to bring it to the center, but you're not going to crease. You're just going to pinch on the right-hand side, midway down this edge. You're going to find where that thickness of paper is, and you're going to pinch. And you're going to take the mountain fold and bring it to the center mountain fold and pinch. You'll feel the layers, and you just give it a little pinch, and then open your paper back up, and I will mark where I pinched. It's half the distance between the two mountains, so you can see. So I've got a mountain here and a mountain here. I've done just a little pinch that's about 1/2 inch wide, halfway between these two sections. And once you've done that, and you don't, like I said, you don't have to mark yours if you can see it okay. I just want to mark mine so you can see mine really clearly. And then I'm going to pick up my mountain fold. Now, if you're having trouble, I was having trouble sort of picking out the mountain this way, you can pick up the paper a little bit on where the mountain fold is and just pull your paper to the left and right, and it will reform that crease. So I've got my mountain crease, and I'm going to bring it up to those pinch marks. And again, as I go across, I'm lining up my folds that go in the other direction, because and I'm sort of pulling the paper and making sure it's back to flat, because we really need the intersection of these pleats to be 90 degrees or it won't work. And again, I'm going to rub my fingers, make a little dent, and this pleat is going to be a little taller, you'll notice. And I'm going to start standing up the pleat and rub your thumbnails across. And as you get that crease going, you can go ahead and make sure your paper is really tight up against itself too. Make sure the two layers are like, I don't want you to have a gap like this. I want them to be pinched together tight. That's why I run my thumbnails right along that bottom edge to make sure they're nice and tight together. And then fold it down. And then I'm going to fold that pleat back towards those two marks that I made. I'm going to rotate my paper around so it's facing the other way, just so I can get at this middle mountain fold. And I like to fold away from me. If you like to fold towards you, then you should leave it. And I'm going to pinch that mountain fold. Again, I had to tug on the edges to get it to get nice and straight. And I'm going to lay down the pleat above it that's facing me. Or you can just fold the marks, the pinch marks that you made. And you're going to fold your pleats so that they butt up against each other. And then I'm going to go over this bottom edge where all that folded thickness comes together, just to start training it to want to fold there. Stand up your pleat, run your thumbnails along that bottom edge, and then fold it back. So now we've got 2 of the 3 pleats this way, and we're going to take the last one, leave the pleat that you just made folded towards you, because you use that as a marker, and then you're going to pick up this last mountain fold. It's running this way. Pinch it together and bring it up to make sure the pleat ahead of it is flat on the surface, and bring these 2 pleats together. Put a couple of pieces. And you should all be pros at this by now because you're on your 9th one. I'm going to start to stand it up, making sure my papers are nice and tight together. I'm going to run my thumbnails along that bottom edge that doesn't have a crease yet. I'm going to slowly flip it towards me and crease. So now you should have, if all your pleats are still flat. And I should point out, my paper is a little soft, and that's why it's not holding its pleats as tightly as yours might be. But it wants to sort of open up. But 3 pleats in this new direction, then go ahead and open up all the folds and flatten out your paper again. And while people are up, we've done all our pleating and our folding, which is great. So part 2 is cutting. And that involves cutting the intersections where our mountain folds met. And I'm going to use my marker again to show you where those intersections are. So we're going to have 9 of them. And if you're looking at your paper, you'll see you've got a mountain fold here and a mountain fold here. So I'm going to use my pen to mark. If you want to use a pencil to mark, this won't show after we're done. You won't see these marks at all. So you're welcome to use a pen if that helps you to see it better. But you don't need to. And if you can see it just fine, you don't need to mark it at all. But we've got a mountain fold, and I'm running my, hang on a second. We're going to mark where the mountain folds cross each other from one valley fold to the next. Okay, we're not going to mark the whole thing. We're just doing these little pluses. So I've marked this mountain fold. This mountain fold. There's a valley here and a valley here. And so I've marked just in between those. And then there's a mountain fold running this way that crosses it in the center from this valley fold to this valley fold. Basically, we've opened up our pleats and we're just marking the mountains that go across a pleat in both
Gina,
directions. Yes.
Gina,
Yes.
Susie is asking if you can show the 3 pleats again.
Yes. I was actually going to do that after I marked
Okay.
these.
All right.
Make sure that everybody has their pluses in the right place. So these marks are in preparation for where we are going to cut. And they don't have to be super straight or super perfect. They're just to help you see the lines. Okay, so now that I've marked these 9 intersections where my mountain folds cross each other with the pleats, I'm going to refold the pleats just so you can see that again. So there's a pleat here that goes this way and this way. There's a pleat here in the center. It goes this way and this way. And they can either lie next to each other or away from each other. And then there's a third pleat here in this direction that also can fold both directions. Make sure all your pleats can fold in both directions. This is a good check. And then I'll rotate. And for right now, we can't fold both sets of pleats at the same time. So I'm going to flatten it out. And then there's a pleat here. If you tug on your paper, the mountain fold will pop up towards you. And so I'm just checking my X's to make sure I marked on the tops of my mountain folds and not on my valley folds. And make sure your pleat folds in both directions. Pop up the center one by tugging at the ends. And the mountain fold will want to pop up. The valley folds will not. And again, make sure that it folds in both directions. So they can either be folding towards each other or away from each other. And you can check your pluses if you want to do this along with me. So my paper was kind of all, ziggy zaggy because of the mountains and valleys. So I'm tugging by the mountain on either end, and then that makes it want to stand up. And don't be afraid of it. It's just paper. Sometimes people get afraid to mess with their paper because they're worried about tearing it or whatever. It won't. It's fine. You've told it what you want it to do, and it knows what to do. So just encourage it to do those things. Okay. I'm going to go back to this direction. So was that helpful to show the pleats? So the pleats can all go this way. They can all go this way. If you've ever worked with fabric before and doing pleats, it's the same thing. Okay, I'm going to go back to flat. I've checked to make sure my pluses are all drawn in the right areas. They all went across the tops of my mountain folds, not down in my valleys. Sometimes it's easy to confuse an intersection. And here's the thing. If you accidentally marked the wrong intersection and you cut it and you realized it was wrong, that's why I have my tape here, because I've done this too. You just tape up the thing you cut wrong and cut the right part. Okay, so are we ready to cut?
Shall we do a poll?
Sure.
Okay. One person needs a few more minutes. Let's just give it another minute
Okay.
or so, and then we'll move on.
Okay. Yeah, and if you want to take the time and just double check your pleats that they're all nice and make sure they fold in both directions, that's going to be important for the step after we cut.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good time to double check these things. I'd also like to point out that when you do this, when you divide your paper into quarters, you get a 3x3 grid of cut folds. If you do 2x3, which is what I did for the numbers one, this one, then you get, so I folded it in thirds, I think this way. I did thirds and then I did quarters. So thirds give you 2 sections, quarters give you 3 sections. So you always get one less than the number of folds you do.
Jillian is asking a name for this cut fold thing.
It's called a cut pleat. That's what Paul Jackson calls it, a cut pleat.
Okay.
And he actually has a YouTube video that shows how to do this as well. Just the basic folding and what I'm showing you here in the class. So I meant to look it up and I forgot, but I can put that in. We can add that along with the videotape on the website.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think we can probably go on.
Okay, I'm going to start cutting my vertical lines. And the way I do that is, and you can use an X-Acto knife and ruler, and that's how I did it initially, but it didn't come out any more accurately than just using scissors. So I recommend you use scissors. It's faster and easier. So the way to do this is, or the way I do it is, I'm going to tug at my mountain folds to make it pop up. And I'm going to fold back this bottom part of the paper so that the fold is the, how do I want to put this? It's the edge of my paper now is the fold. And the other thing I like to do is I put my finger underneath and I pop up that mountain fold, especially if I haven't marked them, just to make sure I'm really on that fold. And then I'm going to, again, watch me before you do this. I'm going to cut straight along that mountain fold, both layers of paper. And I'm going to cut just a hair beyond the valley fold. So the valley fold is right here, and I cut maybe 1 millimeter past it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the second fold. I'm going to sort of push up the mountain that goes in the other direction where I'm going to be cutting. Just, it sort of helps me to seat my scissors in the right place. And then I'm going to just cut just a little tiny bit past the valley. Now we have such a big sheet of paper here. If you go, 1/4 inch beyond, it's fine. It won't make a difference. But if you're working on small paper, which is what I tend to do, then you don't have a lot of room. So I'm just going to pinch that. I've already got the one mountain folded in 2 layers. And now I'm just pinching the one that goes in the other direction where I'm going to cut. Just so that I know I'm cutting along that edge. And just take a second and cut it. So these are now cut away from each other. And then we're just going to repeat that procedure with the other 2. So for the next fold, again, if it's not popped up already as a mountain fold, I'm just going to stretch the paper a little to pop it up. And I'm going to fold back. Now I've got the paper folded in half, basically. And I've got the mountain fold edge facing me. And I'm going to crease it in the other direction so that I know where my scissors are going. Cut just a hair past valley fold. Pinch the second one, the one in the middle, and cut past the valley fold. And now I've got 4 free sections on that pleat. And then once you finish that, take your 3rd mountain fold here. Fold on the edges of the paper so it pops up. And you're going to fold your paper back like this. Fold nice and straight. And I'm going to pinch the mountain fold that goes the direction that I'm cutting. So if you were doing this instead of with scissors with a knife and a ruler, this is, you would leave it on your table, lay your ruler here along that that crease, and then cut with your knife from the fold down to the bottom of your paper. But I like to do it with scissors, and it won't be 100% accurate, but it isn't with the X-Acto blade either. So that's why I switched to this. And I'll do my last one. I'll open it up so you can see what it should look like. Okay, so you should have 9 slits cut in your paper on the mountain folds that are running up and down vertically. You should have 9 cuts. Hopefully you can see that on my paper, that go from one valley across the mountain fold and then to the other valley. And maybe just a hair past. It's better to go a tiny bit past than to not go all the way to the valley fold, because it won't open nicely if you haven't cut all the way to the valley. So go just a hair past that, if you would. Do exactly the same thing in the other direction. So you're going to rotate your paper 90 degrees. And then you're going to pick up at the mountain fold that's closest to you, put your thumb and finger on either side of the paper and pull so that it pops up that mountain fold. And you're going to tuck the paper underneath. And you're going to cut. This time it's a shorter cut. You're going to, I folded the mountain fold in the other direction up a little bit just so my scissors can nest in that fold. And then I'm just going to cut a tiny bit past the valley fold. So I now have these flaps, 4 of them in this direction as well. And then once you've done that, tug on the mountain fold in the center and fold that back. So now your paper is folded in half. And you're going to do the same thing. Cut to the valley. And cut both layers of paper, top and bottom. You should have 2 thicknesses that you're cutting through. And again, you can check your flaps, make sure you cut all the way through both layers. And I'm going to tug on the mountain fold. That's my last section. Fold back the paper. Pinch that first mountain. And cut the 3 sections. Okay, now I'm going to open this up so you can see what it looks like. So when you're all done cutting, you should have 9 places where you've got these plus cuts. So where we had drawn our pluses, they should now be cut. And I will wait a little bit to make, well, there'll be ovals, they won't be circles with this. I'm going to show you how to do that with the top row of pluses. And then if you don't want to make circles, you don't have to. But if you want to, the way to do it is, again, you're going to take that mountain fold on either side, and whoops, no, I don't want to pinch it because it's all cut. Make sure that that fold going across in all 4 sections is a mountain, and fold the paper behind. And I'm going to start on the left, and I'm going to also fold over the other mountain fold. So you should have 4 corners that are free. You should have 4 layers of paper, and they should be the corners of your paper, and they should be cut on the 2 sides. Okay. I will do it again. All right, so if your paper's flat, oh, I didn't wait to see if the survey was okay. You did say
It was pretty close. There were 2 people who were asking for another couple minutes, but you're basically giving them that time more or less.
Okay. Yeah. So you're gonna take, I'm gonna make ovals out of my top row. So I'm pinching the paper and popping that mountain fold up. And I'm gonna fold the top of the paper back behind the rest of the paper. So I'm still looking at most of my sheet of paper. And then I'm gonna take this first section on the left, and I'm gonna fold that behind as well. Okay, so the paper should look like this. And now this corner up here is a cut corner. So there's 4 layers of paper that are folded up together. And they should all have a cut edge at the top and a cut edge down the side. So if you've done it right, you should see 4 cut edges here and here. Okay. And then before you do anything, I'm going to show you, this is the cut we're going to make. To make an oval, you cut a curve like this. Can you see that? Hold it up. You're gonna, and I like to draw the curve. When it's a square, you'll get a circle because this arc will be a 45. Well, and it'll arc across a 90-degree angle. But you don't have this. The distance here and the distance here are different in a rectangle, so we're gonna get an oval. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about the math. Okay, I'm just chatterboxing. So again, I'm going to make sure I'm cutting these open edges. Don't cut into where it's still folded. And I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut through all 4 layers, and I'm just going to cut this curve. So I'm just going to hold the paper and rotate it slowly and cut. So now see how it's this, let me lay it down. See how you have this curvy shape. Actually, let me hold it up. Maybe it'd be better if my background was darker. Hang on a sec. Let me flip my mat over. It's darker on this side. Maybe you can see better. Okay. See how I've cut off the corner and made this curved. So if you want to do that on all 3 of them, you'll just take the next, you can unfold that and then fold, leave that first fold that we did, but then fold the mountain fold that's the center fold of the paper going this way behind. And so again, you have these 4 rectangles that have open edges to the left and to the top. And I'll draw it again. You're going to draw a curve that goes from the corners where the cut stops. You're going to make a curve that goes around there. Now, if you made a curve, no, I'm not going to confuse you. Never mind. Just make this curve. And then I'm going to cut that. So I'm going to start right where my cut starts from the previous step. Cut a nice curve. And the trick to cutting a nice curve is to open your scissors really wide when you start and then just slowly close them and hold your scissor hand straight. Don't move it. And then with the hand that's holding the paper, you actually turn the paper. Maybe you can see that when I do the third one. Okay, so now we've got 2 of them cut. They look like this if you unfold part of the fold. And then I'm going to fold back this last section. I'm going to fold the mountain fold. It's running vertical. I'll draw it again. This curve. I'll draw my curve so you can see it. And then watch what I do with the paper. So I'm going to open the scissors wide and I'm holding the paper with my left hand, and I am not going to move the scissors like this. I am going to hold my scissors and I'm starting to close them, but I am turning the paper. And that gives you a nice smooth cut. Okay, so if you open up your paper again, you should see these diamond shapes, these star sort of.
So Jane just asked if it was okay to cut ovals on all of them, and I said, yes, it is. If you have time, you can do it to all of your sections.
Well, except I want to show you something else.
That's true.
Save one of them, because I want to show you
Sorry,
how to do
Jane.
this, and you need to fold, and you won't be able to do that if you've cut them into circles. It's up to you. You can just watch me do this, and then you can do it with another thing. But yes, you can cut them all if you like. I'm just doing that row because I'm going to leave the middle row as rectangles, and the bottom row, I'm going to show you some folding technique, a couple of folding techniques. But it's your paper. You can do whatever you want.
And you can make another one and do the other
Yes.
variation on that.
Yes, you may. And because this is being videotaped,
Yeah.
you can rewatch the video, and you know, if you forget the steps, that's fine. You can watch the video and make more. I hope you will make more. It's fun. Okay. Are we ready to do the magical part now? Should we do a survey?
Should we do a poll?
Sure.
Okay, let's do one last poll.
Okay. See if people are ready to do the twist part. The twisting part is fun.
Yeah.
You've done all the hard work. Now you get to do the fun part.
Okay, it looks like everybody's good.
Okay, so I'm going to leave the paper just how it is. And we're going to refold our pleats. But because we've cut them, there are sections that can flap. I'll show you. So the same way we've been doing this all along, I'm going to take the paper and my thumb and finger on either end, and I'm going to pull just a little. Don't tug really hard, because now you've got cuts and it could tear. Just to pop up that mountain fold. I'm looking at this mountain fold right here, and I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to stand it straight up and down, and make sure the paper at the bottom of those folds, make sure don't have it be a V shape. It wants to be closed up, okay? Make sure it's tight together. And then you don't have to do it the way I'm doing it, but maybe for this demo, you'll want to do exactly what I do, because it can get confusing otherwise. But later you can flip them either way. Starting on the left, we're going to start laying down the sections of the pleat that we've cut, but we're going to lay them down opposite. So the first one, I'm going to fold down towards me, which means the second one folds away from me. And the third one will fold down towards me, and then the fourth one will fold away. And I like to use the bone folder here, especially right at that intersection between two sections. Make sure, and again, my paper is kind of soft, so it doesn't really want to stay. Hopefully yours will behave better for you. But see how this part of the pleat is towards me, this part of the pleat is away, this one is towards me, and that one is away. That's what they need to do. They need to alternate. And then you're going to do exactly the same, well, not exactly the same thing, but you're going to start the same way. The second section of pleat, you're going to tug a little on either end at the mountain folds to just get them to, whoops, stand up. And if one of them doesn't want to, just put your finger underneath and push it up. And then you're going to stand up the second pleat and make sure the bottom of it, where the valley folds are close together. Okay, for this second row, you want to mirror image what you did in the first row. So the first section of the pleat I folded towards me. So that means the first section of the second pleat is going to fold away from me. And then the second one will fold, and then you alternate them. So the second one will fold towards me, and then let me just do them away and then towards. And when I lift up my hand, hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. And although this is sideways, I tend to think of this as an open door and then a closed door, it's a pair, and then an open door pair and then a closed door pair. There's a lot of ways to think about it. You can think about it as each pleat, as each row. But once you do a couple of them, then they start interacting with each other. But basically you want to, if this one is towards you, that one needs to be away. If this one is away from you, the one after it needs to be towards you. So they need to mirror each other. But I think they look like open and closed doors. So that's another way to help you with the pairs that are going up, to figure out if you're doing them right. And then for the third one, the same thing. You're going to pinch that mountain fold, make sure the mountain is all going up towards the sky. Stand it up. And again, you're going to do the opposite. So starting at the left, this one is facing away from me, the one right below it. So this next, the first one on the left in this third row will come down and face towards me. And then once you do the first one, you just, they go opposite each other. So this one was towards me, so this one will be away. This one will be towards, and this one will be away. And then again, I'd like to give it a good crease, especially right where those two pleats have switched direction. And this is why we needed to crease our pleats in both directions. Okay. So it should look like this. And now that all the pleats have been opened, if you look at the whole page overall, what you will see, let me use my pen. What I like to look for to make sure I did it right. I was talking about open and closed doors, which is good when you're doing them, but once it's all done like this, what I look for is, now it looks kind of like a brick wall. So I've got, if you think about this whole section here, that's a big brick. This is a brick, and they're offset by half. And then there's a brick here, and a brick here, and a brick here, and a half brick here. However you want to think about it. All the pleats should be open. They should go opposite each other along their rows, but the overall pattern on the paper, you should see these flattened areas that are the same size as you travel along, except where there's like half ones in parts of the page. Okay. Now, without unfolding anything, keep it all like this. If you want to lay your hands on it so it doesn't go anywhere while you're turning, you're going to rotate your paper 90 degrees, leaving all those pleats creased and folded flat. And if a crease is misbehaving and pops up, fold it back down. Make sure that they are folded like this. Again, especially right here where they intersect, where they have switched direction. That's where they're going to misbehave if they're going to do it. Okay, now is the final and magical part of this process. We have pleats that run, let me straighten this up now. We have pleats that are running along these rows, this direction now that we haven't refolded. So that's what we're going to do now. To keep the pleats that we've already pressed down from popping up and changing direction, I like to, instead of doing the thing at the ends where I tug, I like to lay my hands flat on the paper and hold these pleats down. And then I'm going to push up with my thumbs and pull back with my fingers to get that first mountain fold to start popping up. Do you see how I'll go back to flat? So it's flat. And I'm just gently, I'm actually just moving my fingers towards me. My thumbs are holding the paper still down here. And then I'm using my fingers up here to pull the paper towards me. And if any of the pleats want to get out of line, use your fingers to get them back in place. So just slowly lift the pleat that's running this way now up. And again, make sure that at the base of the pleat, the two layers are touching. And then if you've done everything correctly, this is what should happen. That center area where we did all the cutting should open up, and you should get the beautiful color from the other side coming through, which is so fun. You should have that. If when you have your pleat up like this, it won't open, that's because one of the pleats in the previous step flipped over. So open it back up to this stage and make sure you've got all these big rectangular areas. Make sure your pleats flip-flopped. And then do this again where you lift. And then it wants to fall open. And then
sorcery.
It's great, isn't it? And then I'm going to lay my hand sort of flat, hold the bottom part of the paper down until that middle pleat starts popping up, and then walk your fingers back and pinch your pleat together, and then it wants to open. And I used a bone folder to smooth it down. And then you do the same thing with the third one. You just lay your hands on top, start pulling. My thumb and my palm are just sort of holding the bottom of the paper flat where I've already folded, and you're just going to pull this paper towards you until that center, I'm sort of covering my paper, sorry, but I'm trying to help you see how to, this is just the easiest way I found to manipulate the paper, and then stand it up, and then it just wants to flop open. Just wants to do it. As long as it's pinched together at the bottom, at the base of that pleat, just wants to pop open. And because I rotated my paper sideways, my ovals are now along the side. So I'm going to turn it back this way. So it's the way we were cutting it. But there you go. So let me show you how to unfold this, and then I'll refold it. But I'll do it more quickly this time. So you have to go back to where you were. So I'm going to turn it back to sideways. And you just pinch the pleat back together, and then this section can unfold. And then you pinch this pleat back together, and then you can pull, and it'll unfold. And then you can pinch this mountain and then pull it, and it will unfold. And here you just want to stand these pleats up. I should do them in their rows. So just stand them up, and then that will unfold. And just stand these up, and that will unfold. And again, like I said, this is paper. Don't be afraid to unfold it, because there's so many things you can do. Okay, so we're back to unfold it. So I'm going to just do this quickly, but and let me rotate this. So pinch down opposite ways, pinch, then you're going to do the mirror image, pinch, mirror image of the previous row. Make sure you have all these rectangle shapes. Turn 90 degrees, hands flat, pinch, and it should open. Hands flat, pinch the mountain fold together, and it should open. Pinch your mountain fold, and it opens. Okay. So one last thing, I'm going to leave the middle row as rectangles, and then this this design that I was doing the other day. Now these were squares, so it'll look nicer with squares, but we can do it with rectangles too. The way I did this is I took this, again, we have these open corners, and you can just fold them down like that. Oh, I'm doing the middle row. Hang on, I was going to leave the middle row alone. Okay, so I'm going to go to the bottom. So outside open corner. If you let me back up. I'm going to make where's this one? This one might be easier to see because they're individual. So I'm going to make, I think of these as like flower petal shapes. I'm going to do this one. So the way I did that is the right top square and the bottom left square I folded. So let me do that here on this rectangle here. So the top right, just take the layer on the very top. Well, you can't really grab any other layer. And just fold that triangle down. And then I'm going to take the bottom left, the opposite one, and fold it up to the center. And once I've creased them, then what I do, so you crease them, and then you can lift up this flap, and then you can fold it to the back. And then you can find the flap that it's attached to, the pleat that it's attached to, and I folded it to the back, and then you can fold it back down. You could also cut them off if you just want to get rid of them, but I like folding them away. And so then you get this cool shape. If you want to do the boat shape like I did here, I don't know if this paper will do it because it's so soft, but basically what I did is you can either curl the edges with your bone folder or something else, which is a little hard to do. Or you can just take the four corners. Can you see me okay? I'm lifting up these four corners of the paper that's free, and I'm just sort of rolling them to the center. And then they sort of want to stay like that. So that's another option if you want something that is, if it's not going to be a book, if it's going to be, just a piece, a sculptural piece, you can curl that. And I kind of like doing it with the bone folder because it curls nicer, but it can be hard to get into the center. And again, your paper is probably behaving better than mine is because this Texo print is very, very soft. It's great for marbling, not as great for folding. Okay, and so that's two of the ideas. And then, so you can make these that point in. So let's do this other one so that it points in this way. So to do that, you want to leave the upper right and the lower left one alone, and you're going to fold the lower right one, the triangle in, and the upper left one down. And then to tuck those behind, so this one is, it's not on this flap. See, if I lift that, I can't see the back of it. It's on this flap here. So I lift that up and then I can see the back of that square. Just tuck it away. And then this one, it's not on this flap. There's a flap here that I lift up and then I can tuck this to the back. And there you go. Okay.
Gina,
So whatever image you want to be the thing that pops up on this side is the paper that you start with face up when you start folding. So if you remember all the way back to the beginning of this, we started with my blue colored paper face up, and we did the folds to divide the paper into quarters. If you do that, in order to see your mountain folds, you have to flip it over, and the mountains will be on the other, it's really the front side when you're finished, but whatever you start folding with face up to make your valleys is what's going to pop through on the other side, if that makes sense.
and I think additionally, the fact that when you're doing your pleats, you're doing the pleats are visible on the plain side of the paper. If you
Yes.
were doing your pleats on the colored or patterned side of the paper, then that's going to be the background, and the plain is going to be popping through.
Yes, which is a look too. I just thought for the demo, it'd be easier for you to see
right.
the light side. And don't forget that the back is also really cool looking. You get this very cool woven paper look on the back side once you've done all the pleating, which I like too. And which is why I highlighted that with this one with the little thingies popping up. And if you want to do it, the one other thing I wanted to mention is if you wanted to do this the way I did the book. So if you wanted to do this and make signatures out of it, then what you need to do is you start with your paper folded in half for your signature, and then you ignore this fold. Then you would treat this half of the paper the way we treated this whole piece of paper, and this half of the paper the way we treated this whole piece of paper. Now you can do all the folds at the same time, especially the folds that go across that center are the exact same fold. But when you're folding up this, when you're folding in this direction, you're ignoring this center fold, if that makes sense.
Let me ask that a little bit better.
Okay.
Let's say I had a word on the pattern side, or a moon, or something that I wanted very specifically to be what showed up in the upper right-hand corner of this side.
Well, that you're going to have to play. So that's more like what I did here. Then you're going to want to make your pleats that go vertically and horizontally. You're gonna, so if your moon, say your moon was here. Well, you know what? Let me open this up. Hang on. I don't know if it's gonna open because I did the folds. Yeah, it's okay.
You know, like when you do a page layout and you go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and what's going to come in what order.
Yeah. So you're gonna have to play. So what I would suggest you do is, if it's something that you are making the moon, whatever the pattern is, if you are creating that yourself, I would take a scrap piece of paper and place the moon, so this is the front side of my paper. This is the back side. I had these 4 quadrants on both sides, and I wanted to bring the image from the back side on the quadrant to the front side. So I only created pleats that went through the middle of these sections. You see that? I didn't put pleats in here. I did not, these are not, so if you look at the pleats, see how much of a gap there is in here? Because I didn't care about this area. So I didn't pleat that. So you want to pleat centered over the image that you want to bring forward from the back side. So if this was a moon back here instead of earrings, let's say this was a big old moon. Well, you're only going to get this little part. This is why I'm saying you should do a practice one because it's only going to bring through this bit and it's going to change the orientation of part of it. So you are not, this image of these earrings does not come through all right side up like this. It changes direction. You don't notice it with just this random pattern paper. But if you look at the pleat here, if I do this just really quickly, see how those earrings are, that image of the earrings is not the same. It rotates, it rearranges these. So it would rearrange your moon. You can't avoid that. It's going to change the orientation, but you could make sure that whatever you wanted to bring forward ended up in this area on the back. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Another question is, first, Maria wanted to know how to close the boats.
How to close them?
Yeah, how to close them.
So these ones don't close all the way. I've just sort of pinched, I just sort of put my thumb and finger on the corners and pinch them towards the center.
So it's fully, now it's a fully three-dimensional piece.
Yes, but I could flatten it back out. I haven't,
Yeah, right.
I glued it or anything. They can go back to flat.
Yeah.
In fact, except where I cut the ovals, I haven't changed anything about this. I mean, even the ones where I folded these triangles, I just folded them back. You can unfold them and they can come back and you can do something else.
Okay.
So that's why I like to not cut it. Well, I mean, except for the circles, you couldn't really fold that curve and get it nicely. So it makes sense to cut that, or to cut, I keep losing this other one, to cut a shape like this. You're not gonna, you can't fold that really. It wouldn't work. So yeah, but I reserve cutting for when I know I want to make a certain shape. You can do a diamond shape. That's pretty easy to do. That's just instead of doing a curved cut like we did for the oval, you just do a straight diagonal cut from corner to corner, and then you would get a diamond shape. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes. Gretchen wanted to know what's the heaviest paper that you recommend?
Well, I don't think I folded anything heavier. The heaviest thing I folded is this one. I didn't show you this one. This one was sort of a flowers and squares one. And this is paper that I eco-dyed, and I think it's like a watercolor paper, but it's not a really heavy one. It's maybe 100 pound. The heavier, you could probably fold really heavy paper. You just want to have bigger pleats. So the heavier the paper is, the wider you want those pleats to be. Just because it would be really hard to fold like a 1/2 inch. If you're holding an inch pleat, then the paper can be thick and it's fine. But if you're trying to do a 1/2 inch pleat and you're working with 150 pound paper or 140 pound paper, it won't be accurate. You won't be able to get a nice crisp fold. So you can do heavier paper. It's a little harder on your hands folding it, but it works. It's just, yeah. I like the lighter paper. This one is really thin. This is a handmade paper. And I also eco-dyed this on one side. And it's this nice thing on the other. And it folded really nicely. And it was, all of these were sort of popping up. So I ironed them flat. I just spritzed it a little bit with water and put my iron on it, on each of these. I did that with this one too. And it just flattened everything out. So that's another thing you can do. Oh, I should also mention on this one, there are a couple places where I did glue down. So where the center of the circle is, I folded over my triangles, and they might have laid flat if I'd ironed it first, but they weren't staying flat. So I just put a little glue underneath those, and also here underneath this bit of flap. So you can glue on top to change the look of it too. The other thing that I haven't really talked about, well, it's sort of, you get the idea here. So with this, we were looking at each one of these pleats that we twisted as a thing to do something with, a shape, or, you know, popping an image through or whatever. But you can also think about the whole grid. And that's kind of what I did here. So I took all of the little folds, all the little pleats that I did in this whole section, and turned them into a single image. And you can kind of do that here too. So I didn't cut ovals out of one square. I made this whole big thing. This is a 2 by 2. This is 2 pleat sections, and this is 2 pleat sections. and I made them the whole thing in oval by just cutting the top and bottom sections. So I encourage you to play. Do the folding and the pleating and the cutting, and then play and see what comes to mind, see what it makes.